Hello guys, this is going to be a quick deck profile for the Elfnote deck that I played in the Remote Duel Regional that happened yesterday. Um, I went X1 in 7 rounds, uh, and most of my matchups I lost the dice roll. The only matchup I ended up losing to was versus a branded Dracotail deck that ended up drawing incredibly well against me game 1 and game 2. But other than that, it was a pretty good tournament. Most of the deck was inspired by Aditya's list that won the regional a day prior. I took his list, made a little bit of changes, and then tried it out, and I got a decent result with it. So this is the deck wall for the deck, and let's get right into it. So for the Elfnote engine, it's 3 copies of the Lucina, 3 copies of the Tinia. Post side, I side out one of these, as this is not that good of a starter, especially going second. But going first, it's a really good starter. 3 copies of Regina. This card's not that good yet before the next format comes out, because there's nothing to really go into, and it's really hard to justify the card as in like hand trap like card, especially on turn 0 when all it does is just bounce a card. But it's one of your best extenders. It helps your cards dodge interaction, so it's still a really good card to run. And then the one quote-unquote brick, the Fortuna, and then 2 copies of Medius, 2 copies of the Power Patron, 2 copies of Vidolium, and 1 copy of Junaldo. And then for the Power Patron spells, 3 copies of Terminus, and then 1 of the Welcome Home to set off Tinia, and 1 of the Rhapsodia to set off Fortuna. There's not much really to say about the main engine. Most of it is really standard, really streamlined. The only one that's not so standard is the 2 copies of Vidolium. We played 2 copies of Vidolium because the card, it represented another way to access full combo. As if you draw this card as your only combo, you can go ahead and pop itself to go ahead and search for Terminus, which gets you to Medius, which gets you to combo. But this card also represented another copy of the Elfnote Power Patron, especially in the grind game. This deck really doesn't have a lot of ways to recur the Power Patron if your board ends up getting broken. Like if you have to get hit up by like a turn stopping hand traps and you have to set up a half board, it happens pretty often that you will lose access to your Power Patron if your opponent is very adamant on not letting you keep the tuner. So having the extra copy of Vidolium is an extra insurance to make sure that you will always have access to your tuners in the grind game, as well as it being a starter. And then for the non-engine, 3 copies of Ash Blossom, 3 copies of Effect Veiler, 3 copies of Flawless, 2 copies of Harmonia, 1 copy of Magnamut. I don't own the third Harmonia, or else I would have played it. 3 copies of Ghost Spell, and then for right now, I have 3 copies of Ghost Ogre, but during the event, this was 1 copy of Ghost Ogre and 2 copies of Droll and Lockbird. I replaced those with Ghost Ogres after the event because the Droll and Lockbird really just didn't perform very well. There's just not as much rogue as before in this format. It's a lot more centralized on Branded and Cool Tune, and those decks, Droll is just not very good against. In fact, I cut the Droll from my main end side completely. So going forward, if I were to still play this deck, I probably would just play Ghost Ogres instead. Let's go into the extra deck. For the extra deck, we played mostly the same extra deck, going from small to large. The 1 level 5 Librarian, in case your Medius plus Power Patron gets negated on the plus levels, it's something to go into. I don't like to actively make this card. I don't think the concept of making this card and then drawing a bunch of cards and hoping to draw into non-engine is a better game plan than just making your level 8 synchros. The 1 Malong for the Harmonia target, the 1 Shaletzia, the 1 Wind Pegasus that you can make, as well as doubling as a Harmonia target, 1 Black Rose to play against Aneacraft and other decks that you really need this mass board cleanup for. The 1 Dawn Dragster, which you default to making if you have a 7 that is not Shaletzia. The best Synchro 8 in the deck, the XL Synchro Stardust Dragon, It is one of the reasons why your deck is so good against Flawless and Droll and Awkward, and I aim to end on it basically almost every single game. One of Mega, which I make more than the Crystal Wing, because I like the game plan where I am more proactive and ripping my opponent's hand instead of like setting up a board of negates that might get broken by unrespondable board breakers. And then one copy of the Croco. This is really good because this allows you to use your XL Synchro on a board with just him and a level 1, which sometimes is very important to dodge interaction, but also this is one of your very few ways of proactively removing a card on your own board, which I found pretty helpful. For example, if I'm under the Terminus lock, I would not be able to clear most of my opponent's board, and making this and then using it to clear something, and then using this to then go into the Ruddy Rose to banish all the graveyards won me a lot of games against Branded, where I wasn't supposed to win because I stopped them from going +6 during the end phase. This is also a card that I played instead of the back-to-back in the Initiatius list because I didn't really believe in that card. And then the one Chaos Angel you make it very often with Fortuna and Medius. And then the one Junora in case you have to activate the effect of Junoldo on the field. And then last but not least, because I didn't play the back-to-back, I also don't play the Riser. Instead, I have a Albolenitus in case it comes up. In case my opponent leaves like an Albaz and a Dragon on the field, I can just like scoop it up. And then it's a dark, so later on I can go Welcome Home or Rhapsodia, send it to revive something. So just in case it comes up, because I didn't really feel like I needed to fight any more Synchros, this was like good enough. So this was just like a flex slot. And then last but not least, let's get to the side deck. For the side deck, we had 3 copies of the Imperm for decks that this card was decently good against, for example, like Cool Tune and whatnot. 2 copies of Bistials for the Branded matchup. I played against a bunch of Branded. I'm glad these were in my deck. 3 copies of Perulia. This was meant more for like Elfnote and Cool Tune, but I played against way more Branded than those, so these really didn't do anything, but I know, good to have. And then 3 copies of Going First cards that I'm supposed to side in by siding out the Fuas when I know I'm going first. I like to play these cards instead of like Solemn Accusation, because like these 2 cards also do something sometimes when I go second. I really don't like running like strictly going first cards in my side, so I made it just the one Judgment. And then last but not least, 2 copies of Lightning Storm, 1 copy of the Duster, and then this was the second Ghost Ogre in the event, but since I moved the Ghost Ogre to the mains and I removed the Drolls, I decided to replace it with an Illusion Gate. And this is just the deck, yeah. So let me know if you have any questions, leave it down in the comments, and thank you very much for watching my deck profile. Have a great day.